The morning my father died, the sky looked exactly like him. Calm, predictable, and quietly powerful. It wasn't supposed to rain, but it did. Not a storm, just that kind of soft drizzle that makes the world feel heavier than it should. My name is Claire Reynolds, and until that week, I thought my family was normal, or at least pretending well enough to pass for it. We were the kind of family that smiled too much in public and spoke too little in private. My father, Charles Reynolds, was a respected man, a small-town businessman who built his legacy from nothing. My brother, Mark, was his golden boy, and I was just the daughter who moved away. When I got the call from the hospital, Mark's voice was steady. "He's gone, Claire. Dad's gone." No emotion, no pause, just a statement. I remember standing in my kitchen, staring at the steam rising from my untouched coffee, realizing that my father's heart had stopped beating while I was arguing with a client about a missed deadline. Life doesn't ask permission to change everything. It just does. By the time I reached our hometown in upstate New York, everything smelled like memories, wet pine, church candles, and the same perfume my mother used to wear before she left us decades ago. I hadn't been back in almost 4 years. The funeral was quiet. Black umbrellas dotted the cemetery like wilted flowers. I stood between Mark and his wife Lisa, who kept clutching his arm like he might float away if she let go. Lisa had always made me uncomfortable, too polished, too perfect, and always watching. When the pastor said, "May his soul rest in peace," I wanted to believe peace was something we actually got after death. But looking at Mark, the way his jaw tightened, I knew that peace was about to leave this family for good. 2 days later, we sat in my father's study, a room that smelled of oak and old secrets. The lawyer, Mr. Donovan, was a thin, pale man who looked like he had never laughed in his life. He adjusted his glasses and unfolded a stack of papers that suddenly felt heavier than the casket we'd buried. "This is the last will and testament of Mr. Charles E. Reynolds," he began. Mark leaned back, his hand resting casually on Lisa's thigh. I sat opposite them, feeling the warmth of the afternoon sun creep through the curtains, landing exactly on my father's framed photo on the desk, his smile too alive for a dead man. Mr. Donovan read for several minutes, the kind of legal jargon that meant nothing until it meant everything. Then he paused. "To my daughter, Claire Reynolds," he said. "I leave the house on Willow Street and all its contents." I blinked. The house? That wasn't his main property. It was the old one. The first house he ever bought. The one he'd left behind years ago when his business took off. It was barely standing the last time I saw it. Mark's head turned slightly, his smile tightening. "And to my son, Mark Reynolds," Mr. Donovan continued, "I leave the remaining shares of Reynolds Supply Company, all financial accounts, and the cabin in Vermont." Lisa smiled then, just for a second. That kind of quiet, poisonous smile that only women who think they've won ever show. I tried not to react, but my hands trembled on my lap. When the reading ended, Mark stood up first. "That's fair," he said smoothly. "Claire never wanted to be part of the business anyway." He wasn't wrong. I'd left years ago, built my own life in Boston. But hearing him say it, like I didn't matter, hit differently now that Dad was gone. I asked quietly, "Why did he leave me the Willow House?" Mr. Donovan cleared his throat. "Your father was very specific. He said, 'Tell Claire everything she needs is inside that house.'" That sentence lingered like smoke. Everything she needs is inside that house. What could that possibly mean? Mark laughed. "Yeah, probably some old furniture and mice." Lisa gave a little smirk, her red nails tapping against her phone screen. But I wasn't laughing, because my father wasn't the kind of man who spoke in riddles. And for him to say something like that, it meant something. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed in my old room at my father's house, staring at the ceiling fan creaking above me. Every rotation sounded like a clock ticking towards something I couldn't see. I kept replaying my father's voice in my head. Everything you need is inside that house. At 3 a.m., I finally gave in to the curiosity. I got into my car and drove to Willow Street, a quiet corner of town that had been forgotten by everyone except the stray cats and the ghosts of our childhood. The house stood there, half lit by the street lamp, peeling paint, cracked windows, and vines crawling up the porch. The for sale sign still hung sideways, rotting. I turned the key in the old lock, and it opened with a groan. The air inside was cold and thick, like it hadn't been breathed in years. My footsteps echoed across the wooden floor. Every corner smelled like dust and something faintly metallic. Maybe blood, maybe memory. I turned on my phone's flashlight and walked toward the living room. On the mantel, still standing, was a framed photo of me and Dad from when I was 7. We were at the county fair. He was holding a cotton candy. I was laughing, missing 2 front teeth. I don't know why, but I started crying then. Not for the photo, not even for him, but because something inside me whispered that this house wasn't empty. And as I turned to leave, I noticed a drawer half open in my father's old desk. Inside was a small leather-bound notebook. My father's handwriting on the first page read, "If you're reading this, Claire, you're closer to the truth than they ever wanted you to be." My hands went cold. That's when I knew this inheritance wasn't about property. It was about a secret, one that could destroy everything my family believed in. I didn't sleep after finding that notebook. I sat in the car, parked outside the Willow Street house, watching the sky shift from black to gray. The town was waking up, sprinklers hissing, dogs barking, and my whole world quietly collapsing. The notebook sat on the passenger seat beside me like a living thing. My father's handwriting, neat, deliberate, and sharp, carried a tone I hadn't seen before. He wasn't writing to his daughter. He was writing to someone preparing for war. When I finally gathered the courage to open the next page, the first line stopped me cold. "Mark has changed. I fear what he's become. And who's guiding him?" I froze. My father loved my brother more than anything. To hear him write something like that, it meant something dark had happened before he died. Later that day, I went back to the main house. Mark was in the kitchen, already drinking coffee like nothing in the world was wrong. Lisa was there too, sitting on the counter, scrolling through her phone with painted indifference. "You went out early?" Mark said casually. "Just couldn't sleep," I replied. He smiled that same practiced smile he'd worn since we were kids, the one that meant he was lying but didn't care if you knew. "You should get some rest, Claire. The last few days have been rough on all of us." All of us. Right, except he hadn't cried once. I asked, "Do you remember the Willow House?" He shrugged. "Barely. Why?" Dad left it to me. "Yeah, I remember," he said, taking a sip of his coffee. "He probably just wanted you to have something sentimental." Something sentimental. That's what he said about a house my father hinted was holding the truth. Lisa looked up, her tone sugary sweet. "That house? Oh, honey, I wouldn't even go near it. It's falling apart. You should sell it before it collapses." I smiled back. "Maybe I'll take a look first." She tilted her head slightly, eyes narrowing. "Suit yourself." Something about her voice made my stomach twist. That afternoon, I met with Mr. Donovan again under the pretense of asking about taxes and transfer papers. But I had other questions. Did my father ever mention Mark or Lisa before he passed? He hesitated, which was answer enough. "Mrs. Reynolds," he said carefully, "your father made some unusual financial changes 6 months before his passing. He sold a portion of his business shares, transferred some to a joint account, but not with you." "With who?" "Your brother," he said softly, "and Lisa." My pulse quickened. "Lisa? My sister-in-law?" "Yes." I thought it was odd, but he insisted it was temporary. Temporary. but the account never got reversed. That night I went back to the notebook. Every page felt like it was pulling me deeper into a world I never wanted to enter. My father wrote about meetings, quiet arguments behind closed doors, money disappearing, contracts being altered. He'd started suspecting Mark was taking company funds, but the part that chilled me most was one line written 2 weeks before his death. "I think Lisa's been controlling him. I can't prove it yet, but she's dangerous." My heart raced as I read those words under the dim light of my old desk lamp. Lisa, perfect smiling manipulative Lisa. Dangerous? Suddenly, small moments started making sense. Her fake sympathy at the funeral, her insistence that I sell the Willow house, the way Mark had grown colder, more detached over the last few years. It all connected now. The next morning I drove to the Reynolds Supply headquarters. My father had built the company from the ground up. It was his life's work. Walking through those glass doors felt like stepping into his heartbeat, or what was left of it. The employees gave me polite smiles, the kind you give to someone who used to matter. Mark's office was now filled with expensive furniture and fake awards. His nameplate gleamed where my father's once stood. I wandered through the halls, pretending to look nostalgic, but I was searching for anything that could back up my father's fears. That's when I met Janet, my father's old secretary. She was in her 60s now, soft-spoken and loyal to a fault. "Janet," I said quietly, "did my dad ever mention being worried about the business?" She looked around before speaking. "Not directly, but the last time I saw him, he told me to make a copy of the company's financial statements and keep them safe, just in case." "Do you still have them?" She nodded, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a small USB drive wrapped in an old napkin. "He said you might need this one day." My heart pounded. "Why me?" "He said because you were the only one who wouldn't sell your soul for money." That was the moment I realized my father had seen this coming. He knew Mark and Lisa were hiding something. He'd prepared me for it in his own way. That evening, I plugged the USB into my laptop. Dozens of files popped up: bank transfers, shareholder documents, and a folder named Private. Inside were scanned letters between Mark and a man named Evan Grayson, a real estate developer. The emails were full of references to hidden deals, property transfers, and something called Project Elysium. At the bottom of one message, I saw Lisa's name copied on the chain. She wasn't just aware, she was helping. The last file made my blood run cold. A scanned medical report, my father's, dated just a month before his death. The note at the bottom read, "Patient stable, no sign of heart failure." But the hospital had said he died of a heart attack. I sat there frozen, staring at the screen, the hum of the laptop fan loud enough to drown out my heartbeat. If my father hadn't been sick, then how did he die? My phone buzzed suddenly, snapping me out of it. A text message from a blocked number. "Stop digging, Claire. You're going to regret it." I stared at the words, every muscle in my body tightening. That's when I knew. The lie wasn't just about money anymore. It was about murder. The day after I got that text, the world didn't feel real anymore. Every sound made me flinch. Every reflection made me look twice. I'd lived my whole life believing my family was flawed, not dangerous, but that illusion had shattered. Still, one thought kept circling my mind like a hawk. If you're reading this, you're closer to the truth than they ever wanted you to be. My father's words, from that notebook, haunted me, and the only place that still felt like him was that old house on Willow Street. So I went back. It was late afternoon when I parked my car by the gate. The October wind had picked up, yellow leaves scattered across the yard like secrets trying to escape. The house stood there, tired and quiet, its broken porch creaking as if it recognized me. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and whispered to the empty air, "Okay, Dad, I'm here. Show me what you meant." The notebook had mentioned a few strange things. One line in particular: "Check the walls. Not everything we build is meant to be seen." That sounded like my father, cryptic, methodical. He'd been an engineer before he built his business, a man who believed every secret needed a structure. So I began searching, room by room, drawer by drawer. The living room was untouched except for the dust. The kitchen smelled faintly of old paint. Upstairs, the air felt colder. And that's when I saw it. A section of the hallway wall that looked newer. The wallpaper didn't quite match. I tapped it. Hollow. Heart pounding, I found a screwdriver in the kitchen drawer and pried the panel loose. Inside was a small wooden box, old but carefully placed. My hands trembled as I lifted it out. Inside the box were 3 items: a small flash drive, a worn-out photograph of my father with a man I didn't recognize, a folded letter, yellowed with age. I unfolded the letter first. My father's handwriting again, this time shaky, rushed. If this reaches you, Claire, I didn't die the way they said I did. Mark doesn't know the whole truth, but Lisa does. She's the reason everything went wrong. The man in this photo, his name is Evan Grayson. I made a mistake trusting him. If you want the truth, plug in the drive. But be careful who you show it to. I love you, Dad. My knees went weak. The same Evan Grayson I'd seen in the emails from the USB Janet gave me. The same man tied to Project Elysium. I picked up the flash drive, my reflection trembling in its metal surface. My father had hidden this, not in his office, not in his safe, but in the one place no one else would look, the house he left to me. Back in the car, I plugged it into my laptop. There was only one video file, finalrecord.mp4. For a moment, I just stared at it. Then I pressed play. The screen flickered, and there he was, my father, sitting in his study, the same one where the will was read. His face looked tired, older than I remembered. His eyes, though, were sharp, scared but determined. "If you're watching this," he said, his voice low and shaky, "I know I can't trust anyone anymore." My chest tightened. Mark's been different. I thought it was stress, but I think Lisa's been using him through Evan. They want to take over the company, and they'll stop at nothing. I have evidence of their deals. If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. He paused, breathing hard. "Claire, I know I wasn't the best father. I know I made you feel invisible when I gave him everything. But I always trusted you to do the right thing. You have my blood, but not my blindness." He looked down, voice breaking slightly. "Don't trust the police yet. Evan has people everywhere. Start with the files in the Willow house. And whatever you do, don't tell Mark." Then he reached forward and turned off the camera. The video ended. For a full minute, I couldn't breathe. I sat frozen, my heart hammering so loudly it drowned out the sound of the wind outside. My father hadn't died of a heart attack. He'd been killed. I needed proof, real proof, something that could hold up in court. So I decided to meet Evan Grayson. According to the documents, he owned a real estate office 2 towns over, Grayson Development Group. The next morning, I drove there. It was one of those glass-walled buildings that scream money and deceit. The receptionist smiled when I asked for him, but her eyes flickered with recognition when I gave my name. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked. "Tell him it's about Reynolds Supply," I said evenly. A few minutes later, a tall man in a gray suit walked out, the same face from the photo in the box. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Claire Reynolds," he said. "Didn't think I'd ever see you in person." "I bet you didn't," I replied. "We need to talk." He led me to a private office, glass door closing behind us with a soft click that sounded more like a trap. "Your father was a smart man," he began, leaning against the desk, "but he got paranoid near the end." "Paranoid or dead because of you?" I shot back. He laughed quietly. "Careful with accusations. You don't know the whole story." "Then tell me." He stepped closer, voice low. "Your brother came to me first. He wanted to expand the company, Big deals, fast money. But your father didn't want to risk it. Lisa convinced Mark to do it behind his back. When your dad found out, things got messy. Messy how? He smiled thinly. Let's just say Mark didn't mean for things to go that far. The room tilted for a second. Are you saying Mark was involved in his death? Evan's eyes flicked toward the window. I'm saying Lisa was, and Mark let it happen. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then back at me. You should go, Claire, before you end up like him. My blood ran cold. I stood up, backing away. I'm not scared of you. You should be, he said softly, because now they know you know. That night I barely made it back home before the rain hit. I parked outside the Willow house again. My mind a storm of guilt, rage, and disbelief. My father's killer was still free. My brother was part of it. And Lisa, she'd orchestrated it all. As thunder rolled across the sky, I stared at the flash drive in my hand. It wasn't just evidence anymore. It was a promise. I whispered into the dark, You took my father. Now I'll take everything you built. That's when my phone buzzed again. A new message. This time from Lisa. We need to talk, alone, tomorrow night. The sky over Maple Creek was gray that morning, as if even the clouds were mourning. The church bell tolled low and steady, echoing through the small town. I stood at the edge of the crowd, black coat buttoned tight, eyes dry but burning. My father, Harold Dempsey, had been the anchor of this family, and now that anchor had finally let go. People said grief makes families stronger. Whoever said that never met the Dempseys. Inside the church, my brother Ethan stood near the casket, one arm wrapped around his wife Lydia, both of them playing their roles perfectly, the grieving son and the devoted daughter-in-law. I watched Lydia dab her eyes with a tissue she didn't need. Even in mourning, she managed to look perfectly composed, like someone in control of the whole scene. When the priest started his sermon, my mind drifted. I kept thinking about the phone call 3 nights ago, the one that changed everything. Emily, our father's lawyer had said, your father updated his will last month. You should be present for the reading. Last month. That was strange. Dad had been in the hospital for nearly 2. Why would he change his will then? He could barely hold a pen. After the burial, people gathered outside, whispering condolences and half-true sympathies. Lydia made sure everyone saw her tears. Ethan shook hands, smiled that fake politician smile he'd mastered. And me? I stayed quiet, because something about this entire day didn't feel right. When I was about to leave, Mr. Conway, my father's lawyer, approached. Emily, he said, adjusting his glasses. The reading of the will is tomorrow, 10 a.m. at my office. It'll be brief, I think. Brief? That word stuck in my head. My father owned a farmhouse, several acres of land, and a lifetime of investments. Brief didn't make sense, unless there wasn't much to divide. The next morning I arrived early. Ethan and Lydia were already there, sipping coffee like they were about to attend a business meeting, not the closing act of our father's life. Lydia gave me a polite nod, the kind that said, You're just a guest here. Mr. Conway cleared his throat. Let's begin. He read the will slowly, his voice steady, detached. To my beloved son, Ethan Dempsey, I leave the family house at 41 Willow Street, along with all associated property. Ethan's hand tightened around Lydia's. She smiled faintly. I waited for my name. It came next, but barely. To my daughter, Emily Dempsey, I leave my personal belongings in a savings account containing $10,000. $10,000. That was all. My father's estate was worth at least $2 million. I didn't speak for a full minute. The room felt smaller, tighter. Finally, I asked, That's it? That's all he left me? Mr. Conway hesitated. Your father was clear in his wishes. Ethan spoke next, pretending to sound sympathetic. Dad wanted you taken care of. You've always been. independent. I think he trusted me to manage the big things. Manage? That word twisted in my chest like a knife. Lydia's hand rested on Ethan's arm as if to calm him, or maybe to keep him from saying too much. Her eyes met mine, and there was no sympathy there, only quiet triumph. After the reading, I stepped outside. The winter air stung my face. $10,000, a lifetime of loyalty, gone in a few lines on a page. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the small apartment I'd rented years ago, thinking about Dad. He wasn't a cruel man. He'd always treated us fairly. Then, why would he do this? The next morning, a neighbor called. "Emily, dear," she said, "I thought you might want to know. I saw Lydia and Ethan at the old house yesterday. They were with a man in a black suit. Looked like they were signing something." Signing something? So soon after the funeral? I drove to Willow Street that evening. The porch light was off, but Ethan's truck was there. Through the window, I saw them. Lydia holding a document, Ethan flipping pages, and the man in the suit handing them an envelope. My father's office door was open. I could see the safe slightly ajar. Something inside me snapped. I parked a block away and walked back, hiding behind the fence. Through the window, I caught a few words. Deed transfer, quiet sale, she won't contest. She. That was me. I realized then. This wasn't just greed. It was planned. They'd been waiting for him to die. I didn't confront them that night. Instead, I went home, pulled out the old box of letters Dad used to send me in college. His handwriting, careful and neat, brought tears to my eyes. Then, one envelope caught my attention, postmarked just 2 months ago, but I'd never opened it. Inside was a short note. "Emily, if you're reading this, something's gone wrong. Don't trust everything you hear. Go to the house on Willow Street, the old study. The truth is there." Dad? My heart stopped. He knew. He knew something was coming. I looked at the clock. 2:17 a.m. Tomorrow I'd go back to that house, not as a grieving daughter, but as a woman ready to uncover every lie they'd buried. Because if my father had hidden the truth, I was going to find it, even if it destroyed what little family I had left. The morning after I found my father's letter, I drove straight to the house on Willow Street, the same house I'd grown up in, but this time, it didn't feel like home. The driveway was half covered in frost. A for sale sign stood crooked near the mailbox, its red letters shouting betrayal. My key still worked. That surprised me. Ethan hadn't changed the locks yet. Inside, the air was stale, cold, and smelled faintly of lemon polish. Lydia's obsession. I moved quietly, afraid of waking ghosts that never left this house. The old study was at the end of the hall. Dad used to call it his thinking room. He'd sit there for hours, surrounded by stacks of paperwork, bank files, and memories. The door creaked open, and for a moment everything looked the same. His leather chair, the old globe with faded countries. But then I noticed the drawers were empty. Every file, every record, gone. Except for one thing. A torn piece of paper sitting on the desk. It looked like a fragment of a document, ripped from something larger. Across the top, in faded blue ink, was written, "Dempsey Holdings, ownership transfer." My stomach tightened. My father's company had gone bankrupt 5 years ago, or so Ethan told everyone. But this paper said otherwise. Suddenly I heard a car pull into the driveway. I froze, peeking through the blinds. Ethan, he was alone this time. He got out, slammed the door, and walked toward the house. I didn't have time to hide. So I ducked behind the old curtains just as the front door opened. "Lydia!" he called out. No answer. He moved through the house, footsteps heavy, impatient. Then the sound of him opening drawers, moving things, searching for something. Then I heard him curse under his breath. Where the hell did she put it? She, Lydia. I stayed still, heart hammering. He walked right past the study, close enough that I could smell the cologne he always wore, the one Dad used to buy him every Christmas. He went upstairs. The second he was out of sight, I grabbed the torn paper, folded it, and slipped it into my pocket. Then I slipped out the back door and ran. That night, I couldn't stop shaking. I knew they were hiding something. But now I had proof. Still, proof of what, exactly? That Dad had assets no one mentioned? That Ethan forged documents? I needed help. So I went to see Clara Jenkins, Dad's old assistant. She'd worked with him for 20 years before he retired. She lived 2 towns over now, running a small flower shop. When I told her about the will, she frowned. That doesn't sound like Harold. He adored you, Emily. He used to brag about how you handled yourself. Said you were the only one who never asked for money. Her words hit me like a bruise. Then why would he give everything to Ethan? She hesitated, looking over her shoulder, then lowered her voice. Because Lydia was helping him. In the last few months, she was always at the hospital. I thought she was being kind, but maybe... Clara sighed. She was always carrying papers. Business papers. Maybe he signed something he didn't understand. My chest tightened. You think they tricked him? I think, Clara said carefully. Lydia's been planning this for a long time. I drove home and pulled up my father's email account. The password was still saved on my old laptop. Most of it was routine, hospital bills, reminders. But then I found one draft that had never been sent. It was dated just a week before he died. Subject, for Emily, in case I can't tell her myself. Emily, if you find this, then I wasn't strong enough to fix what they've done. I trusted your brother, but he let her in. Lydia is not who she says she is. She's using him, and she's after more than the house. There's a safe deposit box under my name at Haven Trust Bank. The key is hidden where only you'd think to look. Dad. I reread that message 10 times. It wasn't paranoia. He'd known. He'd tried to warn me. Where would he hide a key where only I'd think to look? And then I remembered something. The piano. When I was a kid, I used to play it badly. And every time, Dad would joke, "Hide your mistakes in the low keys, Em." I went back to the house that night. The street was empty. The for sale sign now had a sticker. Under contract. I slipped inside quietly. The piano sat in the corner of the living room, covered with dust and silence. I pressed each key until I reached the lowest one, and it didn't move. Something was jammed underneath. I lifted the fallboard and reached in. My fingers touched something cold, a small brass key taped beneath the wood. I smiled, tears forming in my eyes. Thanks, Dad, I whispered, but then a voice behind me. Nice trick, Lydia said. I turned around, my blood freezing. She stood there wearing her perfect coat, her perfect smirk. How long have you been sneaking around? She asked calmly, stepping closer. What did you do to him, Lydia? Your father? She said softly. He trusted the wrong people. But so did I. You think Ethan's the villain here? He's just a fool in love. Love, I spat. You forged his father's signature. She laughed quietly. Forged? Oh, Emily, you really don't know what your father was capable of. What are you talking about? But she didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her purse, pulled out a small envelope, and tossed it on the piano. You'll find the truth in there. Just remember, not every secret deserves to be found. And then she left, heels clicking against the floor like punctuation marks on a warning. I waited until her car disappeared before I opened the envelope. Inside were 3 photos. One of Lydia, younger, standing beside a man I didn't recognize. The second, that same man shaking hands with my father. And the third, a newspaper clipping. Local business partner found dead after dispute with Harold Dempsey. My hands trembled. Lydia hadn't just married into the family. She'd come back for revenge. I didn't sleep that night. Lydia's words played in my head like an echo that refused to fade. Not every secret deserves to be found. I kept staring at those photographs. her standing beside that unknown man, that same man with my father, and finally, that headline. Local business partner found dead after dispute with Harold Dempsey. The date on it was 1999. I was only 12 years old then. What did Lydia mean? Was that man her father? Her brother? And what did my father have to do with his death? The next morning, I drove to Haven Trust Bank, the one mentioned in Dad's email. The brass key was in my pocket, and with every mile, the weight of it grew heavier. When I arrived, the clerk looked at the key and checked her system. Box number 184, she said. Yes, it's active. May I see identification? I showed her my ID, and after a few minutes, she returned with a small metal box. The lock clicked open, and inside was a single brown envelope labeled Private for Emily Only. I took it to a small booth in the corner and opened it carefully. Inside were two things: a letter, written in my father's handwriting, a USB drive in a clear plastic sleeve. My hands shook as I unfolded the letter. My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, it means you didn't believe the lies. 20 years ago, I made a mistake that's haunted me ever since. I was part of a business venture with a man named Michael Hargrove, Lydia's father. We invested in land deals together, but he began laundering money through the company. When I discovered it, I confronted him. Things got heated, and that night, he fell. The police called it an accident. Lydia never believed that. She swore I'd ruined her life. I thought she'd moved on until she came back into Ethan's life under a new name. Her real name is Lydia Hargrove. I should have told you sooner, but I thought I could protect you by staying silent. Everything you'll need is on that USB. It contains records of the real transfers, proof that she's been stealing again. I trust. You'll do what's right. Love always, Dad. My heart pounded. It wasn't just greed anymore. It was revenge that spanned decades. Lydia had married my brother to destroy my father's legacy from the inside. I plugged the USB into my laptop in the car. There were dozens of files, financial documents, scanned letters, audio notes. The last file was a voice memo recorded a week before Dad's death. She's closer than ever, Emily. I can't tell Ethan. He won't believe me. But she's poisoning everything. If anything happens to me, promise you'll find the truth. I felt my throat tighten. I'd promised, even if I didn't know it yet. I drove back to the Willow Street house that afternoon. It was still technically Ethan's now, but it was my father's house in every way that mattered. When I stepped inside, it was quiet, unnaturally so. Dust hung in the air like unspoken words. The study door was ajar again. I pushed it open and froze. The safe was gone. I ran through the drawers, the shelves, empty. Every trace of the documents my father had once kept had been wiped clean. Except one thing. On the floor near the desk, a fresh shoe print. Lydia's, probably. She'd been here again. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging, Emily. You're not ready for what you'll find. No name, no number ID, but I knew who it was. Lydia Hargrove, or whatever she wanted to call herself now. That night, I sat on my couch surrounded by files and memories. I decided to visit the one person who could confirm the truth. Detective Ryan Cole, the officer who handled Michael Hargrove's case 20 years ago. He was retired now, but after some digging, I found him living in a small town outside Cincinnati. When I showed up at his doorstep, the old man opened the door with suspicious eyes. "You're Harold Dempsey's daughter," he said before I even introduced myself. "Yes," I said. "I need to know what really happened in 1999. He sighed deeply, then motioned for me to come in. The walls of his house were lined with old case photos and dusty files. He poured himself a coffee, took a sip, and then said quietly, "Your father didn't kill that man, Emily, but he did cover up what happened." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Michael was drunk. They argued at the construction site. He slipped, hit his head on a beam. Your father panicked, called me instead of 911. I was young and stupid back then. I helped him make it look cleaner. The police never looked deeper. Why? I whispered. Because he said he did it for you. Said he didn't want you growing up thinking your father was a killer. I felt tears sting my eyes. All these years, Lydia believed he murdered her father. She had every reason to, Ryan said grimly, until she started digging up the past for her own gain. When I got home that night, my apartment door was slightly open. I froze. Inside, the lights were on. The files I'd spread across the table were gone. Someone had been here. Then, on the table, I saw something new. A single sheet of paper that hadn't been there before. It read, "You don't understand, Emily. He destroyed more than one life. Stop before you become another." And under that note, my father's old wristwatch, cracked and blood-stained. I sank into a chair, heart racing. The air felt heavier. Every sound made me flinch. Someone wanted me to stop, but I couldn't, because now I knew what Lydia was capable of. And I wasn't just fighting for inheritance anymore. I was fighting for the truth my father had died protecting. I locked the door, grabbed my phone, and texted Ethan. "We need to talk about Lydia, about Dad. Meet me at Willow Street tomorrow, noon." If I was right, Lydia would come too. And when she did, I'd be ready. The sky was heavy that morning, gray and still, like the world was holding its breath. I parked a few houses down from Willow Street, staring at the place that had become a graveyard of secrets. Ethan's car was already there. Lydia's silver SUV pulled up 10 minutes later. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel. I wasn't ready, but I couldn't turn back now. I had my father's USB drive, the letter, and the truth, and today I'd force them both to face it. When I stepped out of the car, Lydia was already on the porch. She smiled that same smooth practice smile. "Good morning, Emily. You look tired. Long night?" "Not as long as yours is about to be," I said. Ethan opened the door from inside. He looked exhausted, like a man caught between two wars he didn't understand. "Emily, what's this about? Why all the drama?" "Sit down," I told him. "Both of you." We sat in the living room, the same place where we'd once watched Christmas movies, the same couch Dad used to nap on. Now it felt like a courtroom. I put the USB drive on the coffee table. "This has everything. Transfers, documents, forged signatures. Dad's entire financial trail. Lydia's name is all over it." Ethan frowned. "What are you talking about? Lydia doesn't even—" "She does," I cut in, "because she's not Lydia Walker. She's Lydia Hargrove, daughter of Michael Hargrove, the man Dad's company lost in an accident." Ethan's eyes widened, flicking toward his wife. "Lydia, is that true?" Lydia didn't blink. "Yes," she said calmly. "My real name is Hargrove, but your sister's twisting the story." "Am I?" I asked, pulling out the letter. "Because Dad confessed it all before he died. He knew you'd come for us. He knew you'd use Ethan to destroy what was left." "Destroy?" Lydia laughed softly. "Harold Dempsey destroyed my family long before I met your brother. My father lost everything because of him. The company, the money, our home. I grew up watching my mother die poor while your father lived in that big house pretending to be the victim." Ethan stood angry now. "You married me for revenge?" She turned to him slowly. "At first, yes." Her voice didn't shake. "But you're not as innocent as you think, Ethan. You knew the will wasn't real." He froze. "What? You think Harold didn't change it?" She sneered. "He did. He rewrote it a month before he died. Left everything to Emily. You helped me replace the document. You just didn't realize I'd take more than you expected." I stared at him, disbelief turning to nausea. "Tell me she's lying." Ethan's face went pale. I just wanted what was fair. You left, Emily. You didn't care about the business, about Dad's estate. Lydia said—" "She said what you wanted to hear," I snapped. and you believed her." The room fell silent except for the faint ticking of the wall clock, the one Dad built himself. Ethan sat down, burying his face in his hands. Lydia crossed her arms, watching me like a cat cornering a bird. "You think exposing me will fix anything?" she asked. "The bank accounts are already moved. The house is sold. By the time the police see your so-called evidence, it'll be worthless." I smiled faintly. "You should have checked the USB twice. There's an automatic upload link in there. Everything's already backed up and sent to the lawyer who handled the original will." For the first time, Lydia's mask cracked. "You—" "Checkmate," I said. She lunged forward suddenly, grabbing the USB. Ethan jumped between us, shouting, "Stop it!" But she shoved him aside. "You don't know what your father did!" she screamed, tears welling. "He killed my father and the world called it an accident." "He tried to save him," I shouted back. "He made mistakes, but he didn't murder anyone." "You're lying," she cried, her voice breaking. "He pushed him. I saw it. I was there." The words hit me like a slap. "You were there?" She nodded, trembling now. "I was a child. I hid in the truck while he went to meet your father. I heard them fighting, then a scream, then silence." Ethan backed away slowly, horrified. "Lydia?" "He fell, Lydia," I said quietly. "I spoke to the detective who covered it up. He told me everything." Her face twisted, anger, grief, confusion all colliding at once. "You don't know what it's like to grow up with nothing, watching your father's name rot because of someone else's lie. And you think destroying mine makes it right?" She didn't answer. She just stood there shaking, staring at the USB clutched in her hand. Then, in one motion, she hurled it into the fireplace. The small device hit the flames and melted instantly. "There," she whispered. "Now we're all free." But she was wrong, because truth doesn't burn that easily. I pulled out my phone. "That wasn't the only copy," I said. "It's already online. The lawyer has it, and so does the state attorney." Lydia froze. Her expression crumbled, rage giving way to defeat. She turned toward Ethan, her voice trembling. "You told her, didn't you?" He shook his head. "No, I didn't. I swear I didn't." But the look on his face said otherwise. Lydia took a step back, then another. For a second, I thought she might run, but instead, she whispered, "He ruined my life, and now yours too." Then she turned, walked to the front door, and disappeared into the cold daylight. Ethan sank to the floor, shaking. "She's gone," he muttered. "It's over." But I knew it wasn't. Not yet. 2 days later, the police came. They found Lydia's car abandoned near the river, door open, keys inside. No trace of her. Some said she ran, some said she jumped. No one ever found a body. Ethan turned himself in a week later, confessed to the will forgery and obstruction. He took a plea deal, maybe out of guilt, maybe just to make peace with himself. The court restored my father's assets to me, but it didn't feel like victory, more like an empty echo of justice. That night, I went back to Willow Street one last time. The house was silent, stripped bare. As I stood in the doorway, I whispered, "It's over, Dad." I found the truth. But in the corner of the room, something caught my eye. A small blackened piece of plastic, half melted from the fire. The USB. I picked it up carefully, and for a moment, I could almost hear my father's voice again. "Promise me you'll find the truth." I smiled faintly through tears. "I did," I whispered, "even if it hurt." The rain hadn't stopped for 2 days straight. It made the whole town of Ashbury Hills smell like wet cedar and regret. Standing beneath a sea of black umbrellas, Emma Reed watched the last shovel of dirt hit her father's coffin. Each dull thud felt like the closing of a chapter she wasn't ready to end. Her father, George Reed, wasn't perfect. He was a stubborn old-school man who believed money measured worth and silence solved everything. But he'd also been her protector, the one who picked her up when her mother died, who made sure she went to college, who always left the porch light on when she came home late. Beside her stood her older brother David and his polished wife Claire. They looked like a magazine couple. Designer black coats, quiet confidence, and the kind of smiles that didn't reach their eyes. David hadn't cried once. He was too busy shaking hands with lawyers and bankers, already talking about next steps. "You holding up?" he asked, his tone halfway between sympathy and business. "I'm fine," Emma lied. "Dad would have wanted us to stay strong," he replied, eyes flicking toward the hearse as if timing the moment. When the crowd began to thin, the family attorney, Mr. Lawrence, approached with an envelope sealed in gold wax. "George left strict instructions," he said. "The will is to be read today at the Reed estate." That word, estate, made Emma's stomach tighten. The house on Willow Street was where she'd grown up, but since her father's stroke 2 years earlier, David and Claire had moved in to help manage things. She hadn't been invited much after that. The rain followed them to the house. Inside, everything looked frozen in time. Heavy drapes, antique furniture, the faint smell of tobacco that refused to fade. The portraits on the walls stared down like silent judges. Mr. Lawrence set his briefcase on the oak table and began reading. His voice was flat, official, but every sentence carried weight. "To my son, David Reed, I leave the management of Reed Lumber and Supply and all business-related assets." David's lips twitched into a small, victorious smile. Claire reached over, squeezing his hand. "To my daughter, Emma Reed." Emma straightened. "I leave the family home on Willow Street, provided she maintains the property and does not sell it for a period of 5 years. A house. Not cash, not shares, not access to the company. Just a house with crumbling paint and an unpaid mortgage." Then came the line that changed everything. "All remaining liquid assets, investments, and savings accounts are to be transferred into a family trust managed jointly by my children. Withdrawals require both signatures." Both. David's expression flickered, barely. But Emma caught it. Displeasure. Control shared wasn't his favorite thing. "So we both have to agree on any money decisions," she said quietly. "That's right," Mr. Lawrence confirmed. Claire shifted in her seat. "That's inconvenient, don't you think? For business matters?" David cut in smoothly. "Dad probably didn't understand how complicated that would be. We'll sort it out." After the reading, Emma wandered through the house alone. The ticking grandfather clock in the hallway filled the silence. Everything felt smaller than she remembered. In her father's study, dust motes swirled in the thin light. His old pipe sat beside the ledger books, and on the desk lay a photograph, her mother smiling, holding baby Emma. She touched the frame, and for the first time all day, tears came freely. "You always kept this place together," she whispered. "Now it's mine, but it feels like nothing." Behind her, Claire's heels clicked on the floor. "You should think about selling," Claire said softly. "You don't need the burden. Houses this old are money pits." "Dad wanted me to keep it," Emma replied. "Sure," Claire smiled. "But maybe he didn't know what's best for you anymore." There it was, the first crack in the polite mask. That night, Emma stayed in one of the upstairs rooms. The rain drummed against the windows as she stared at the ceiling. Beneath the sadness, something else began to stir. Suspicion. Her father had been meticulous about money. Yet, when she asked Mr. Lawrence about the total estate value, he looked oddly uncomfortable. "There were some inconsistencies in recent transfers," he'd said. "Your father made large withdrawals before he died. Records aren't clear." Withdrawals? Her father hadn't been healthy enough to drive, let alone visit a bank. So who had? Emma replayed the months before his death, David taking over the accounts, Claire always by his side, insisting they handled the stressful stuff. The memory made her chest tighten. Maybe grief was making her paranoid, or maybe something was truly wrong. Morning light crept across the curtains. In the kitchen, David was already on the phone. "Yes, I'll have the papers ready for transfer once the account's unlocked," he said quickly, then paused when he saw her. "Who was that?" Emma asked. Just the bank, routine stuff. Dad's accounts are frozen until we both sign. Right, and we will, he said, too quickly. When he left, she noticed his briefcase half open on the table. Inside, a bank statement, her father's account number, a transfer of $180,000 labeled medical expenses. Reed Lumber. Her father's hospital bills had been covered by insurance. What medical expenses cost that much? Her hands trembled. She took a photo of the page with her phone and slipped it back. That night, as she lay awake in the creaking old house, Emma realized something chilling. This wasn't just about inheritance. It was about something taken long before her father died, and she was the only one who still cared enough to find out what. The next morning, the rain had finally stopped, but the clouds still hung low, like the sky itself was tired. Emma stood in her father's study, the air heavy with old paper and dust. She hadn't slept much. Every sound in the house, the creak of the stairs, the sigh of the wind, felt like a whisper from the past. On the desk, she spread out her father's old financial records, his neat handwriting covering every page. Her father had been the kind of man who documented everything: grocery lists, repair costs, even how much gas he used in a month. But in the last year, the entries had changed. The handwriting looked shaky. And then, 3 months before his death, the records stopped completely. That's when David and Claire had taken over. Medical expenses, Emma murmured, staring at the bank statement photo on her phone. For who? The hospital had covered everything. She remembered calling to confirm after his stroke. Her father had even joked about how useless insurance felt until you finally needed it. Someone had lied. Later that day, Emma drove to Ashbury Medical Center, clutching her father's patient file. The clerk, a woman named Rita, remembered her. "Mr. Reed," she said with a kind smile. "Such a polite man. Always called me ma'am, even when he was hurting." "Do you happen to have billing records?" Emma asked. Rita checked her screen, then frowned. "We do, but looks like the account was accessed a few months ago. Cleared, in fact. Paid in full by a third party." "Third party?" "Yes, someone under the name Claire Holloway Reed." Emma's heart dropped. Claire had paid the bills, but from whose money? "Can I get a copy of those transactions?" "Not without legal authorization," Rita said softly. "But if you happen to check your father's patient ledger, you might find the note I added, unofficially." Rita slid a folded piece of paper toward her, pretending to wipe the desk. Emma took it without a word. In her car, she opened it. "Check March 7, account number mismatch, possible withdrawal before approval." March 7th, the exact day her father had fallen down the stairs. Back at the house, Emma's phone buzzed. It was a text from David. "David, meeting with the lawyer tomorrow. Don't make this difficult." Emma, "About what?" "David, the trust? We both know you don't want the hassle. Let's make it easy." He wanted control, always had. Growing up, David was the golden child, captain of everything, always the favorite. Emma was the quiet one, the emotional one. Their father used to say, "You think too much, Emma. David acts." But now she saw how dangerous action without conscience could be. That evening, she walked into the kitchen and found Claire sipping white wine, dressed like she was about to attend a magazine shoot. "Rough day?" Claire asked casually. "You could say that." "I was just remembering your dad. He was a strong man, but sometimes too proud for his own good." "Proud?" Emma said, tilting her head. "He refused help. David did everything to keep things together. Honestly, I don't know how your brother managed." Emma studied her. Claire's smile was flawless, but her eyes darted slightly. The eyes of someone used to lying without being caught. "You were the one managing the hospital bills, right?" Claire froze for half a second, just long enough. "Oh, yes, I helped with some paperwork." "You used Dad's business account." "It was for his care, Emma." $180,000 worth? The glass in Claire's hand trembled just slightly. Be careful what you're implying, she said quietly. Money complicates grief. Then she stood, brushed invisible dust off her skirt, and left the room. That night, Emma opened her father's study again. The drawer she'd checked before, locked. But her father had always kept a spare key hidden under the old floorboard near the window. She pried it loose, her fingers brushing the cold metal. Inside the drawer, she found a single envelope marked in her father's handwriting, "In case of betrayal." Her hand shook as she opened it. Inside was a copy of a life insurance beneficiary change form, unsigned, unfiled. The name David Reed had been scratched out, replaced with Emma Reed, and dated 1 week before his death. But it had never been processed. The next page made her gasp. A note written by her father. Emma, if you are reading this, it means I failed to set things right. There is something wrong with the books. Someone is moving money through the company. Trust no one until you find the house deed. It's not just property, it's proof. Emma stared at the words, her pulse hammering. The house deed? Proof of what? The next morning, David arrived early. He was all smiles, holding 2 coffees. You're up early, he said. I was hoping we could talk. About what? The trust. I spoke to Mr. Lawrence. We can simplify everything if you just sign over financial control to me. I'll handle the paperwork, taxes, investments. You'll still get your share, of course. Emma's chest burned. You mean I'll get whatever you decide I get? He leaned closer. You don't understand how complicated Dad's business is. I do. You'll just get overwhelmed. She met his gaze. You mean I'll get curious? His jaw tightened. For a split second, the charming mask cracked, and she saw the greed beneath. You always were dramatic, he said finally. Don't make this ugly. He placed the coffee on the counter and walked out. The smell of bitter roast lingered long after he left. That afternoon, Emma called the county records office. Yes, we have your father's property deed on Willow Street, the clerk said, but it looks like there's a lien filed recently. A lien? For what? Reed Lumber and Supply, filed under your brother's signature. Her blood went cold. David had mortgaged her inheritance, without her consent. That's when it hit her. The house wasn't just symbolic. Her father had tied real financial records, maybe even evidence to it. And now David was trying to erase the trail. That night, Emma searched the basement. The old concrete walls smelled of mildew and secrets. She followed the sound of dripping water until her flashlight caught something behind a rusted cabinet. A metal box, bolted to the wall. Inside was a bundle of files marked with her father's initials and a faded photograph. David and Claire standing in front of a new house, smiling, dated 3 months before her father's death. In the corner of the photo, someone had written in blue ink, "Paid in full, from company account." Emma sat on the cold floor, trembling. Her brother had used their father's business money, maybe even stolen it, to buy a house for himself. And when their father tried to change the insurance and expose it, something happened. She turned off the flashlight and whispered to the empty basement, "Dad, I'll find out what they did. I promise." And for the first time, she wasn't afraid anymore. The morning sun barely reached through the heavy curtains of the Willow Street house. Emma sat on the edge of her father's old chair, the envelope and photograph spread out before her like crime scene evidence. The words, "Paid in full, from company account," glared back at her. She'd been pacing for hours, her mind looping the same questions. If her father had planned to expose David, why hadn't he filed the insurance change? Why hide everything inside a basement box? And what did he mean by "find the house deed"? It's proof. She decided to start with the county records office. Again. After a 20-minute hold and 3 transfers, a clerk finally answered. "Yes, the Reed property," the woman said, typing. "We show an active lien filed 4 months ago." "I didn't authorize that," Emma said. "Then you'll need to dispute it. But hold on." There's something odd here. What? There's a secondary property linked to your father's name. Smaller one, different address. Also on Willow Street, but number 52, not 19. Emma frowned. That's impossible. My father only owned this house. Ma'am, I can send you the listing. It's under George Reed Trust, created 8 months ago. 8 months ago, right after his last hospital stay. That evening, Emma drove to 52 Willow Street. The address was just 6 blocks away, hidden behind overgrown trees and a leaning fence. The place looked abandoned, peeling paint, boarded windows, a faint no trespassing sign barely visible under ivy. But the gate wasn't locked. The door creaked open to a stale, dusty smell. Inside, she found stacks of newspapers, a single armchair, and an old typewriter sitting in the corner. It looked like her father had been here, or someone who wanted to look like him. She turned on her phone flashlight and noticed papers tacked to the wall. Invoices, receipts, and company letters from Reed Lumber and Supply. Each had notes scribbled in her father's sharp handwriting. Unauthorized withdrawal. False purchase order. Check signatures. He'd been investigating something, maybe for months. Then she saw it. A small lockbox under the desk, half hidden under a tarp. She tried to pry it open, but it was secured with a combination lock. Her father had loved riddles, numbers, and birthdays. She whispered, "Mom's birthday," and spun the dial, 0826. The lock clicked. Inside were 3 items: a flash drive, a bank ledger, a handwritten note. The note read, "Emma, if you are reading this, they will come for it. The truth is inside this drive. Keep it safe. Don't trust David, and don't let Claire near the accounts. She's not who she says she is." Emma sat frozen, the words ringing in her ears. She's not who she says she is? That night, she plugged the flash drive into her laptop. It contained folders labeled by date. Inside each, scanned invoices, payment transfers, and one folder named Private. She opened it and gasped. It contained copies of emails between her father and someone named M. Dawson. "George, I'm worried. The signatures on these checks aren't yours. They match your son's handwriting." "I know, I've seen the same. I'm trying to gather proof." Claire contacted me again. She's asking questions about the insurance. Something's off. The last email was dated 3 days before her father's accident. "If something happens to me, check the trust paperwork." Claire changed the witness line. "Not legal." Emma's chest tightened. Claire had tampered with legal documents, possibly the life insurance or even the will. She clicked the next folder, a scanned document titled Final Trust Draft. The signature on the witness line clearly read, "Claire Holloway," not the notary's name listed in the official will copy. Her father had been right. The next morning, she drove straight to Mr. Lawrence's law office. He looked surprised when she burst in, holding the papers. "Emma, I wasn't expecting—" "Did you notice this?" she said, laying the trust copy on his desk. "This witness line. This isn't the notary. It's my sister-in-law." "Claire? That can't be—" He adjusted his glasses, frowning deeply. "Let me see the original from our archives." He disappeared into the back office and returned 10 minutes later, pale. "It's the same signature," he said quietly, "which means the document you used to finalize the estate was altered before it reached us." He finished. "That's forgery, Emma. Serious forgery." Emma's voice trembled. "Can we prove it?" "If we locate the original notarized copy your father gave me months before, yes. But—" He looked uneasy. "That file went missing after David's last visit." She stared at him. "David was here?" "He said your father wanted him to collect some personal papers. That was 2 weeks before the funeral." When she returned home, David's car was already in the driveway. She could see him through the window, pacing with his phone pressed to his ear. "No, she doesn't know yet," he said sharply. "I'll handle it. Just get the files ready." Emma's pulse raced. He looked up, saw her, and quickly hung up. "You've been busy," he said, forcing a grin, "running around town asking questions." "You forged Dad's trust," she snapped. And Claire helped. Watch your mouth, he hissed, stepping closer. You think you can play detective? You have no idea what you're getting into. You stole from him. You lied. He was going to ruin everything. David's voice cracked, anger spilling out. The company, the accounts. He didn't understand how bad things were. Emma stared. So you took his money? I took what I deserved, he shouted. For a moment the air felt thick, electric. His jaw tightened, eyes dark. Then he stepped back, forcing calm. You should leave town for a while, he said softly. Grief does strange things to people. He walked out, slamming the door behind him. Emma's hands shook, but her fear had burned away. He had just confessed. Not fully, but enough. That night she returned to the hidden house at 52 Willow Street. She knew someone had been there before her. Footprints, a coffee cup still warm. Then she saw movement. A shadow stepped from the kitchen doorway. An older woman with silver hair and tired eyes. You're George's daughter, she said softly. Who are you? Martha Dawson, the woman said. Your father and I worked together. And I think I know who killed him.